I thank the chair and welcome to the witnesses. I know we're running short on time, but Texans can always find time to brag about the Lone Star State. So I'd like to remind my colleagues that my state was the fastest growing state in the union the last 10 years. People from all over the country were flocking to Texas for 4 reasons. Our income tax, 0. Common sense regulations, right to work state, and cheap, reliable energy. One of the biggest challenges my state faces in the future is reliable energy. ERCOT, who controls power generation for about 90% of my state, has said we need 5 more power plants, large ones, coming online by 2014, or we risk having another power crisis. If we have a summer heat wave, like in August of 2011, we'll have rolling brownouts and blackouts again. EPA's war on coal has stopped 2 new power plants from being built, Las Brisas and White Stallion, along the Gulf Coast there by Corpus Christi and Bay City. My question is for you, Mr. Siegel. Can you talk about the reliability issues you see coming? Are my home state's challenges the exception or the rule?
No, sir. They're not the exception, although Texas faces a particularly onerous situation, particularly with the amount of manufacturing assets we have in refining and in chemicals, et cetera, that the entire rest of the country relies upon for their manufacturing. Look, prior to those rules being laid down by the EPA, our friends over on the Senate side spent 7 months trying to figure out if EPA had even talked to FERC about the electric reliability impact. I'd like to read their conclusion. Instead of taking the questions and concerns seriously, the EPA largely ignored requests for the agency to work closely with FERC and reliability experts to identify potential reliability risks and then amend the rules to lessen those risks, very similar to what your bill would do. Indeed, in recently released internal emails, FERC employees expressed frustration with trying to work with EPA, noting, quote, "I don't think there's any value in continuing to engage EPA on these issues." They had no interest in trying to address reliability on an a priori basis.
And that makes my state's crisis acute. Mr. Williams, Mr. Ciccio, I'd like to add anything to Mr. Siegel's comments?
I'm glad you brought this up. I've worked in the manufacturing sector for 42 years, my entire life. And I can confidently say that there's greater concern about electric reliability by manufacturers than ever before, and it's because of the EPA rules on the power sector. And it's a prime example of the EPA not having the expertise to deal with the entire direct and indirect implications of their actions.
I would agree with Mr. Ciccio and note that, as I mentioned earlier, refiners, other than crude oil costs, electricity is their second largest cost. The same applies for petrochemical manufacturers. And reliability issues will be significant if there are reliability issues. They're going to significantly impact our sector and our ability to make the products that make this country run.
One question for you, Mr. Williams. How would this bill have helped if it had been law when EPA got in and destroyed our flexible permitting system? Remember, they came in, rolled in 17 years of precedents, overriding the Clinton administration, the Bush administration, the first years of the Obama administration, threw it out in the court. The Fifth Circuit finally had to overrule it. But how would this bill have helped that situation, and what's the damage been done? Have we recovered yet?
Well, the flex permit issue is a great issue because EPA officials had told people in our industry, yeah, it worked, you just didn't do it the way we wanted you to do it. So it was, which required folks to go back to the drawing board and deflex a lot of their facilities. And it goes back to the point I made about how this bill would help. This bill actually, as many members have highlighted today, add more transparency to the process. It will require, it would allow the Department of Energy to take an energy impact and economy-wide look at how all these different regulations fit together and how the benefits and the costs are assessed, in some cases how the costs aren't assessed. I mentioned the conflicting regulations with Tier 3 and greenhouse gas before. There's been a lot of talk about PM. The Tier 3 rule also talks about addressing PM. EPA, as was earlier mentioned, just finalized a PM standard that they say was protective of the public health and environment. The PM analysis in Tier 3 did not look at that. It looks at it in silos. So how do we know where the PM benefit is actually coming from. So these are just examples of oftentimes the fact that these regulations happen in a silo, and there are implications that aren't considered when EPA is going through their analysis. This bill would help because the Department of Energy would certainly prevent against the fox guarding the hen house scenario, for lack of a better analogy.
Thank you.